Well, my first project using these garden shapes is going to be this cute little birdie, and I think it's going to look so good in a flower pot on its stake. And I've got my gloves on, and I'm using these gloves whenever I use Apoxie Sculpt. And if you haven't seen Apoxie Sculpt or mixed Apoxie Sculpt, I'll put a link to a video up on the top of the screen there that will take you to my video showing you how to use Apoxie Sculpt. Why I like using Apoxie Sculpt is because if I'm adhering the ball chain and I use something like Prep Multi-Use Adhesive or some other adhesive, if the ball chain rolls around, it gets covered in the adhesive. Whereas using Apoxie Sculpt, I find when I put the ball chain into the Apoxie Sculpt, it stays there. The ball chain is only, I think, 3 millimeters, and normally I use a little bit larger, depending on how thick the tessera is. So I'm just going to roll this out just a little bit more. That's about it. And just stick that down to the outline of the bird. And we want to make sure that it doesn't go over the edge. We're looking at it to stay within the boundary of the bird. We can clean it up if it does, so I'm not too fussed by it, but it's good if we can get it pretty close to begin with. And then I'm just going to get the ball chain and just start. I'm going to push it in. And of course, once we've done this, we need to then scrape away any excess Apoxie Sculpt as well. Now, how you do this is up to you, and also the look that you're after. When I'm working with ball chain, I like to have my balls fairly close together. I like them quite tight, but of course, everyone's different. Now, if I was using glue on this, I'd probably be in a right mess by now. Okay, that's not going to work like that, because to actually get those balls to work, I'm going to have to actually cut that with the flush cutters and rejoin it. So I'm just going to go in there with the flush cutters, cut it. I'm not pushing the ball chain right down to begin with. I'll do that when it's exactly where I want it to be. This is just to get an idea, or to at least get started. To put it up there. That's it. So when you're playing with the balls, like, you can have them so they're far apart like that, or you can squash them up, and I like to have them squashed up. How you want your balls to be is up to you. Everyone's totally different. That's got it. And this is stainless steel ball chain, so this is fine for outside. I still like using ordinary ball chain because it does have a nice patina. You get a nice patina to it, but again, it's personal preference to what you like. Okay, so that's basically the outline. Now what I've got to do is push it down when I'm really happy with it. So we have to make sure it's aligned with the outside, and then we're going to push it down. We want to make sure it's flush with the outside, not overhanging the outside edge. Have a look around the outside, clean all that up. And you can mosaic the side of these birds if you want to, but I'm not. I'm just leaving I'm going to be painting mine black on the edge here. This is really great for pulling away that excess Apoxie Sculpt. I haven't used these tools before. These are new. But it's working really well. And when you're scraping along this edge here, scrape downwards, because like you're slicing it, because you'll get a much cleaner look and it won't pull the ball chain away from the edge. You've got to clean it out because if you leave any epoxy sculpt in there, you won't be able to put the Tesla in there. So you've really got to make sure that you get any excess out where you don't want it to be. Oh, I think I'll go with this. I really like that look of that kind of design. I was going to do something different, but that's even better. So you never know when you're doing something how it's going to turn out. So there you go. I'll just go with that design. And I really like these because there's a lot of cheap ones on the market where it's quite thin and you push them in and it's quite hard to hold. Now, when you've done this, you need to also clean your tools with water because you want to get off any residue. And the same thing with this ball chain. I'm going to actually get a damp rag and just wipe it over with some water, and that will clean up that residue. Best things about these shapes is that you can make them as complex or as simple as what you would like as far as mosaic them, you know, in the shape itself. They can be as simple or as complex as what you want them to do as far as the design goes, is what I'm trying to say here. There you go. I'm going to leave this set up now for a little while, and then I'll come back and we'll start filling in. Now, I'm looking at putting crockery into its tail here. So I've got this bag of crockery that I'm looking at using, and I'm thinking about maybe putting in a piece of this floral design into the tail. Now, this is also just a tip how I keep my crockery. When I've broken up the plates, I put them into plastic bags, and they're in their own individual plastic bags, and then I put them into a box. And it just saves sorting through a whole heap of crockery that's been broken up. So this keeps it all together and just means it's very organised. And yes, occasionally a piece of crockery might pierce that plastic bag, but if it's, you know, gets too bad, then I just replace the bag. So I'll just grab this small piece here. And like I said, I'm going to be using this floral design here and just put it in that tail. So I'm going to have to cut this up quite small. But I don't want to waste this beautiful piece up here, which is quite textured, and it's a textured flower design. So I'm looking at actually cutting that off. Now I could use my ring saw and it would cut through there beautifully. No issue at all. However, I really am thinking about, for those people out there that don't have a ring saw, how would I go about this? Well, I'm actually looking at using my glass scorer. Then I'm looking at actually breaking it off. I know that my scorer breakers are not going to be thick enough, or rather the distance in here is too large, so it's not going to be, these areas here are not going to be close together, so it's not going to be able to break that at all. So what I'm going to do is actually score down this area, the area where I want it to go. And like I said, I don't know whether this is going to work. It does work on tile. It's very hard to score when it's kind of like caving in from both sides, so we'll see what it's like anyway. And then I'm going to get my C-Bell Max Pro compound nippers or my C-Bell scissors. I think I'll use these because the scissors, although are really good to use, but I'm trying to avoid it breaking across there. With these, if I put it in the center, hopefully it'll break along the score line. Sometimes magic works and sometimes it doesn't, so we'll see how we go. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, so I actually saved that, which is what I was actually after, because this is really beautiful to use, and I could also use that in the birdie actually if I wanted to. But anyway, we'll put that aside to go back into its bag. Now I need to kind of get this into a straight line, so I'm going to now just use my compound nippers. And the reason why I'm using these is because I can nip a pretty straight line. And it's small nips. Now I'm going to just take this off. I could also use my grinder, which is something that I might do. Yep, I'm going to have to use my grinder on this because it's going to be too difficult to do it, and I don't want to I mean, obviously if it breaks, I can just join it together. So I'm just going to grind that edge and this edge here, so it sits in there, so I'll be back. Well, that works much better. It fits in beautifully. And although my CBL Max Pro compound nippers did a great job in cutting this piece, when you're using a very thin piece of crockery and it's got to go into a very tight area, then really grinding it really does help a lot. I now have to cut it where I want to have that cut to go. So I'm looking at cutting it on an angle. So I'm probably going to, no, that's not going to work. So I'll just cut it straight down there. All right, we'll take that out and then I'll put in a little bit of the Apoxie Sculpt. There you go. Right, now the next step is for the glass. Go. You know, when you're working with glass, you do realize that different glass breaks differently. Sometimes it works exactly how you want it to, and other times it just doesn't. I'm loving these new tools. Okay, that's fine there. We'll put him in there. I could have actually adhered the actual eye on afterwards, but I just like to have that embedded into the actual mosaic. That's why I think this will work. This looks really quite good. But again, you know, it's a personal preference. Well, there you go. Here's all finished, well, almost finished. I've just got to grout it, but before I do that, I'm going to just clean everything off with a very damp rag to get off any residue from the Apoxie Sculpt, and then I'm going to let that all cure, and then I'll come back and do the grouting, which will probably be tomorrow. Now to grout the little birdie, and I'm going to be using Lidocol epoxy grout, and if you want to know how I've mixed that, then I have a tutorial which I'll put the link to the video in the description box of this video, because I've already made a tutorial on it, and this is a waterproof grout. So I'm going to now just apply a little bit onto it. I've mixed up too much, but I generally do, and I'm just going to work that into it. It's not going to take too much grout, that's for sure. Now what I do have to be careful of, that I don't block up the little hole at the bottom there where the metal stake goes into. Make sure that I'm getting it all in those nooks and crannies. I'm not worrying about the substrate itself because I'm going to be painting it black anyway. So I'm not too worried about marking it. If I wanted to, I could actually tape off all around there, but like I say, I'm not too worried about it for this particular piece. Okay, I'm going to get a sponge and water and then start wiping that off. And I'm going to go in, just wipe that off. And the key to using epoxy grout, or the Lidocol epoxy grout, is you need a reasonable amount of water to clean it all up. And if you find that when you're cleaning this and there's a little bit of a pulling on the sponge with the actual tessera towards the end, and you find that that's kind of like a drag on it, well then you probably need more water, because that is key to cleaning this up. Okay, turn that over. Wipe it all down. Check for any cleaning up. For instance, in there, go in there and clean that out from the beak. That's looking really good. So we're going to leave that, and then we'll come back and have a look at it when it's dry. Now let's just have a little look at this. But I think it's looking quite good. I don't think there's anything else that needs doing to it, to be quite honest. Just check the back and make sure that it's all totally clean, which it is. Sides are all good. There's no grout where it shouldn't be. Yep, no, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to leave this to set up, and then we'll come back and put a steak in there, and we'll let this dry a little bit more, or cure it a little bit more, but I think it's looking really good. Now I've painted the sides and the back. Now if you're going to be painting the back, you need to make sure that you use a primer paint that's suitable for PVC, because if you just use an ordinary paint, the paint will scratch off, and that's exactly what I've used. I've used an acrylic paint because that's what I've had, and although it is a very good quality paint, but I know this can scratch off. But this is only for me, so I'm not too bothered about it, but I would consider using a primer on that before you apply your final coat of paint, just to make sure that that really bites into the PVC. Now I'm going to show you how I put the steak in, and all I've got here is a piece of masking tape, and I'm just going to put that over the hole there and just on each side, because I am going to be using a sealant adhesive, and the stuff can be a little bit messy, especially when I use it. And all I'm going to do is put a hole in the center there. I think the hole is there. Yep. Just maneuver that in there. And if a bit of the masking tape goes in there, don't worry about it. It's fine. But I've got that there just to protect it, because if I do get any of this adhesive on the painted area, then it is going to change the look of that area. So that's what I've done. I think this will work quite well. Now I've put the adhesive into here, and you can use any adhesive that works. This is just what I had laying around. Normally I'd use the Dell Fix All Crystal Clear or something like that, but I actually didn't have that. So this is a marine adhesive, so it should work quite well, and it is a waterproof adhesive. Now I've got it in this syringe here because this will make the application a lot easier. And all I'm going to do is put that into the hole, and I'm not going to put a lot into it because it will squeeze out. So I'm just going to put a little bit in there. I think that will be enough. That's all it needs. And then I'm going to get the steak and put the metal steak, and just push that in, swirl it around, and that's it. Now I'm going to leave, I could actually take that off. No, I might leave that a few minutes, and then I'll peel the masking tape off. So I'm going to leave this standing up and lean it against something, and then we'll come back when it's all finished, and we'll have a look at the final piece. Well, there you go. The birdie's all finished, and I think he looks really cute. And I do really love the reflections in the glass. But unfortunately, the camera's not going to do it justice, because this stained glass here is mirrored and it's purple, and I don't think it's going to really reflect how true it looks. It looks absolutely amazing in the right light. And the same with the ball chain. It looks really, really great. But unfortunately, as we know, with any photography, when it comes to mosaics, it really doesn't do the piece justice. But he's going to look, I think, really, really good in a pot plant, or in the garden for that matter. So anyway, I hope you've taken something away from this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did like it, please think about giving it a like. If you haven't subscribed, think about subscribing. And if you have any comments, please put a comment down in the bottom of the YouTube channel. If you have any questions, I'm always interested in having a read. And of course, I know my other Treasury Road viewers enjoy reading them as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy.